This week's topic is measuring crime. When we measure crime, it's easy to see crime as a dependent variable. It could be dependent on the independent variables such as the amount of police officers, the amount of lighting in a neighborhood, the amount of prior offenses and probation status, and things like that. But it also can be an independent variable. For example, how crime affects other things, such as a person's sense of safety in a neighborhood, the average income in a neighborhood, and things like that. So some basic issues when measuring crime. What types of offenses are we looking for? Are we looking for victimless crimes? Are we looking for assaults? Are we looking for robbery, grand larceny, burglaries, homicides, misdemeanors, gross misdemeanors, traffic tickets, felonies? What are we looking for? We also have to consider what units of analysis are we using. Are we looking at offenders, victims, police departments, the number of incidents that occur, which offenses occur, and what is the purpose of our study? Are we trying to monitor a police agency? Are we trying to make an agency accountable? Or are we trying to do some exploratory research to try to develop some new theory towards why an offense might be occurring? The most widely type of measure when looking at crime is based on law enforcement records. Some types of crimes are detected exclusively by observation, such as victimless crimes and traffic types of crimes. But also crimes can be reported by victims and witnesses. So what types of crimes are not measured well by the police? Things like assaults and robberies. Oftentimes those go unreported. A lot of times the way the police gather the information and report the information in the databases can have a reliability problem, where some police departments might report it a certain way, where other departments or agencies report it a different way, and therefore you're not getting very accurate statistics. The Uniform Crime Report, or simply the UCR, was developed by the FBI in the late 1920s, early 1930s, and it is probably the most well-known law enforcement gathering research database out there. It used to be a voluntary service by law enforcement. Now it's very common that law enforcement departments report to the Uniform Crime Report, which is still under the jurisdiction of the FBI. So it breaks down index and non-index offenses. Index offenses, which are now called Type 1 offenses, include murder, rape, robbery, larceny, burglary, aggravated assault, motor vehicle theft, and arson. And Type 2 offenses are a variety of other less serious offenses. Although the Uniform Crime Report is a very well-respected, great source of information, it isn't something that is all-exclusive or all-exhaustive. It's not a perfect measure by any means. It's a good example of one of those measures that have reliability problems, because not all law enforcement agencies report the same way and submit the same information. It is really a good way of looking at trends over time when we're looking at cities and counties. It's also, you could be considered more like a criminal database summary. In a joint effort between the FBI and the Bureau of Justice Statistics, helped to convert the Uniform Crime Report to a national incident-based reporting system. And this system reports each crime incident rather than the total number of certain crimes for each law enforcement agency. So therefore, these features in this report are individualized about each incident, offenses, offenders, and victims. A very important measure within criminal justice is the victim surveys. Victim surveys are great because they help to find the dark figure. The dark figure are crimes that are not reported to law enforcement. It provides information on victims, offenders, and the incidents themselves. The most famous of these, or the most important of all these, in the United States is the National Crime Victimization Survey, and that is under the jurisdiction of the Census Bureau and has been since 1972. It's a longitudinal panel study where they'll look at households that agree to participate for 3 years. They'll do 7 interviews about crime with them, 1 every 6 months. But it's important that it doesn't measure all crime, and this too has issues where, of reliability and things like that. But it's still a really good way of finding what that dark figure is. So some of the good positives about the National Crime Victimization Survey: it measures both reported and unreported crimes. It's independent of changes in the reporting. More information about how crime impacted the victim, where the Uniform Crime Report really doesn't have much on that. And it also provides more victim characteristics than the Uniform Crime Report. So in looking a bit more at the downside of the National Crime Victimization Survey, one of the big things that to me is kind of glaring is that people oftentimes misremember or misreport because they feel that they may have made contradicting remarks to law enforcement, and this survey is a way to get them and things like that, where so people are somewhat anxious and paranoid when filling out these forms. And again, when somebody goes through a crime, there is a lot of high emotions going on, and when people have a lot of high emotions, sometimes, which is common within post-traumatic stress disorder, is people might misremember or not remember at all important elements of a traumatic event or a crime such as an assault. There's not a lot of information in these reports on the offenders themselves, especially since not all crimes are reported, and there's not much information related to a criminal justice response. It doesn't look at crimes against commercial establishments, and it only looks with that United States residents, that people that aren't in the census, the U.S. Census, aren't going to be asked questions such as illegal immigrants and foreign diplomats and things like that. Another good study is the National Survey on Drug Use and Health. It's a self-report type study. It looks at a sample of households, goes back to 1971. Looks at lifetime drug use, current use, and heavy usage. Encourages very good candidate responses through the different procedures that they use. Looks at various living situations such as college dorms and homeless shelters. The Monitoring the Future, otherwise the MTF research survey, has been conducted by the National Institute on Drug Abuse since 1975. Includes a large-scale sample of high school students, and they are asked about status types of offenses such as alcohol and tobacco use, as well as juvenile delinquency, other criminal acts, and the use of illegal drugs. And then a large portion of these, around 2,000 to 3,000 of these students, are asked follow-up questions. So in summarizing, the Uniform Crime Report and its supplemental homicide report is best for looking at crimes in which the victim is a business or commercial establishment, as well as homicides. The National Crime Victimization Survey is best used when we're looking at crimes against persons or households that aren't reported to the police. And the self-report types of surveys are best at looking at where crimes where there isn't necessarily an identifiable victim, such as drug use and things like that, and crimes that are less observed and not as commonly reported to the police.